our 2021 Rise series. We're excited to see you guys. We have a big crowd today, and I'm going to give you guys a minute for everyone to pop in. We are not surprised that we saw such big interest in this topic of occupancy. It's always been an important one in our business, but even more so right now. So as you can tell, it's pretty warm here in South Carolina. So I hope wherever you are, you have great weather as well. And we are ready for spring here. Things are blooming. It's a gorgeous day. Our friends and colleagues are getting vaccinated. We're very optimistic about where we're headed as an industry, and that recovery will be fast and imminent for us all. So looks like we've stabilized just a bit. So I'm sure we'll have more friends popping in. Again, I'm happy to see you guys. So this is the March edition of our 2021 webinar series, Rise. If you've been with us before, you know that our series in 2020 was Reimagine. And we chose that as a theme because we didn't want to miss the opportunity that 2020 afforded us. And I know that sounds crazy. I'm a business owner too, so it sounds crazy to me, but we wanted to help our clients think differently about their businesses and their companies and use this drastic time of change to reinvent what they intended for their company, what they intended for their people, how they wanted to provide services, what their cost structure looked like. And you guys, if you haven't and you're interested, go pick up some of the recent webinars that I just think are critical in our environment today that discuss revenue and mainly tuition rates and the bold moves that people are making right now to right size their tuition rates. And also to look really carefully at your discounting. So I know I'm getting preachy, and if you guys haven't heard me on my soapbox, please pick it up and think about those aspects of your business right now. We all survived, well, maybe not all of us, but a lot of us here survived 2008 and 9, where this company made zero for 2 years. We don't make money unless we get deals done, and no one was doing deals. And I'm sure they were difficult times for you guys too. But what happened after that was a little even more sad, in that there was so much fear in our community about increasing tuition rates to the place that they needed to be healthy, that people waited years. And 5, 6, 7 years later, clients said to us, we haven't raised tuition rates in 7 years. And it's really hard to catch up from that. We've got some strategies for it. So jump on our recent webinars and be sure that you do not miss this as an opportunity to get your tuition rates and your discounting under control. So that's part one of financial health. Today's conversation is about occupancy. And we think of that kind of as the second part of the driver of the revenue. So that's what we'll dive into today. I'd like to invite you all to share your ideas, because the best ideas come from you guys. I'm going to share some that we have worked with clients on and heard from clients that they're using successfully to drive their occupancy, but please be very liberal with your use of the chat feature that you'll find on the top bar of your Zoom frame. And also feel free to put questions in the Q&A tab. So I'll keep an eye on those as we chat. So feel free to interject as we go. And then also we'll plan time at the end for you guys to share your best strategies for building occupancy. So I think I obviously know a lot of you guys, so thank you for joining us again. I'm Kathy Ligon, and the CEO and founder at Hinge Brokers. You guys have heard me recently talk about the strength of the industry that we work in right now. So we believe that our clients are about 65 to 70% recovered um, since COVID started. So we have clients 100% recovered. We have some 40% recovered. So there's a range, but it feels to us like the occupancy recovery is somewhere in the 65 to 70% range. And what I mean by recovery is we're measuring the same period last year. So let's say March of last year, and the beginning of March of last year, you should have been at one of your strongest times. So most people experience the highest occupancies they've ever seen in January and February of 20. And unemployment was low, people were working. So we really enjoyed a easier time in gaining occupancy during that time. So the way we're measuring recovery now is the number of enrollments as well as the revenue from March of last year to March of this year. So think about it that way. I'm going to give you some metrics to help you in the way you think about how full you are and the way we think about it that eliminates some hidden dangers. So we're going to do some math. I hope that doesn't freak out too many people. It's always a happy day for me when the accountant gets to do math, but usually not so many other people. But to help you think about how full you are, what strategies might help right now, and what strategies are great in the long run. But again, if you haven't done the most important part, which is reconsider your tuition rates and discounts, listen to this, but do that first and then implement policies and practices to build your occupancy. So use the comments in the bar. We'd love to hear your thoughts. So here's what we have in store for this hour. We have a couple of events coming up at Hinge. We're just so excited to think about seeing our clients again. And so I'll tell you about those. We want to talk a little bit about what's our baseline and our framework for what a healthy school and a healthy occupancy looks like. And then we want to talk about how to think about your space and using it to maximize occupancy. We want to talk some math about how to calculate occupancy, and then what are the best strategies now and in the future to build and maintain a healthy occupancy. And as we said, we always welcome your questions. So first opportunity coming up at Hinge is that we made a change in early, right before school started in 2020, to bring you our one-day financial workshop in a web-based format. We historically have done this in person, and we do love to see everyone, and we love to have a good time when we get together. But also we felt like we could reach more people safer if we did it in a web-based format. And of course, less expensively for you guys if there's no travel involved. So we have decided to maintain that event in a virtual format and do it more than once a year. So our next scheduled workshop is on Friday, May the 7th. We're nearly full with that. We limit that to 100 participants because we really like some close connections and conversations in that. And we do a fun happy hour event the night before virtually, and then we're together all day on Friday. If you can't attend that day, you can also purchase the recording and watch it later. We love to have you live because we like your participation and thoughts and questions, but do what makes sense for you and let us know if you have questions about that. We have, so we would have been together 2 weeks ago for our annual conference in Newport Beach, California. We just got that conference in Miami last year, right before the world shut down, about 2 weeks later. And we felt incredibly lucky and blessed to be able to do that. And I think it was one of the last events that happened before we all went into our corners. At the moment, we are planning to open registration in June for an October 5th through the 8th in-person date. We made the decision that that particular conference would work best in an in-person format, because so much of what we do is create connections between people. And you can do that to some degree in a web-based format, but we didn't want to miss the informal settings that happen around the conference that help people get to know each other and share great ideas. So we will make the call in June about whether we need to stick with that date or delay again. We will only do it in person if we feel like we can do it well and we can protect you guys. So be on the lookout for that. Put the dates on your calendar. We love to see you there. And then finally, you guys have heard me talking about the last couple of months, just the strength of the selling industry is just blowing us away right now. We really expected going into COVID that we would shut down processes just like we did in the last recessionary period, and the exact opposite has happened. We've actually geared our team up for the level of work that we have going on right now, and we're getting record numbers for our clients and selling their business in real estate. It's just fantastic. We're so excited that we helped our friend Kevin Campbell in Charlotte, North Carolina, move his 10-site operation to an international provider. It's a provider from France. And we were really excited to make that move. And they're excited to be in the state and of North Carolina and the US and to be expanding there. So we have closed 41 schools since COVID started. We have about 50 under contract, and I don't know, so many in review and valuation. I'm not sure I could give you the number, but lots of activity and lots of opportunity, and that makes us really happy for our clients. So let's dive into this content here. And I see that you guys are already popping in with a Q&A in the chat, and I love that. So I'll pause at the end of each slide and we'll see what we have. And some of it may make the most sense to address right there, and some of it may make more sense to save to the end where we brainstorm some ideas. So first of all, let's just talk about what we believe a healthy company looks like. So we all start from the same place and have the same frame of reference for what health looks like and then how we best drive our company there. So first of all, if we look at the occupancy line, we usually think about occupancy as a percent of the license capacity of the school. So given a 100 capacity, how full am I? Do I have 70 children? Do I have 90 children? Do I have 100 children? And how full am I based on license capacity? I get the question a lot. My license capacity is this, but shouldn't I be using an effective capacity based on the way that I'm using the rooms? And I want to say no to that, and here's my logic. Room size does at times limit the amount of occupancy you can put in your building based on age groups and group sizes. And licensing standards can change, and now you're in a building that used to be okay for 2 group sizes, and now it's a smaller number. The reason I like to look at total license capacity is I want you not to get stuck in your head with this room needs to be used for this age group, and now I'm limited to these numbers. Maybe you make the proactive choice that that's the age group that goes into that room, but you could do something different. You could rework walls. You could put a different age group in there. And I'm not saying those are practical or smart for you to do, but those are options that I don't want you to forget about. So I prefer that you use your total license capacity. The only exception I will say is there's some grandfathered schools. Florida is a great example of some schools being grandfathered under 25 square feet per capacity, where it's really 40 or 45 for newer schools there. So if you've got a funny situation like that, maybe calculated under current licensing standards, because I don't think you would put as many children in the room as the grandfathered capacities allow. So most schools, how we like to think about occupancy in most schools is that we want the school to be able to break even when they're 50% full. And so this also plays into your tuition rate. And what I do is challenge people to think about how they charge fees so that they are able to break even if they're 50% full. Usually their facility cost is a big factor here. So there's a certain amount of fixed costs that you have to cover, whether you're 20% full or 100% full. But I want you to be able to, in a perfect world, and look, the world is not perfect. So if you don't fall into exactly what I'm saying, and there's a reason, then maybe we can help you strategize differently. But I'd like for you to almost back into your tuition rate by breaking even at 50% full. So if you can figure out that cost structure and then say, okay, at 50%, how much money do I need to make to break even? Then compare that, break it down to a tuition rate and see if you're in the right ballpark. At 70%, we believe that companies can now be more financially healthy. You'll see the first set of numbers here that we think at 70% full, most companies would spend 50 to 55% on staff costs, which includes salaries, benefits, payroll taxes, training. Another 11 to 13% on other operating costs, let's say food, supplies, vehicles, things like that. Most companies' facilities cost them 22 to 25%. And when we say facilities, we mean rent or mortgage, maintenance, insurance, property taxes, telephone. And then there's always another administrative bucket for things like credit card fees and legal and accounting professionals and office supplies and things like that. So it feels to us like at 70%, we would like for you to be able to put 15% on the bottom line. Now, when I say on the bottom line, that's free cash flow that you guys are going to invest back in your school. So that doesn't include capital items you might need. You need to do a big repaint of your school, a big rebrand. You need to do a new playground. You need to invest in some short-term coaching or training for your team. You have the resources to stay progressive and invest in your company. You also have a minimum level of resource that perhaps you want to grow. And this is a fantastic time to grow as well. And I know it's contrary to what you might think. When our occupancies are lower and the cash flow is down, it's instinctive to pull back on spending and growth and opportunity. And also there's different risk tolerances, and I get that. You know, everyone isn't on the same place with how much risk they're willing to take. But if you are in the risk taker mode, and I'm a moderate plus risk taker, so I made a big investment in some new people in 2020 to help support what we saw coming. But in a year where we lost a good bit of money, we made the investment in people. And so the beauty of going then from 70 to 90% is that almost every dollar in tuition above 70% flows straight to the bottom line. And why is that? It's because you've paid for the building, you're at a healthy minimum level, most of your staff costs are in place, you've paid for your management, Probably your lead teaching teams are in place. You might need some part-time or assistant teaching staff. You're gonna have a little more food and a little more supplies, but the majority of those tuition dollars flow straight to the bottom line. So it begs the question about flexibility with unusual things that you don't normally provide, which we'll talk about some of those and whether those are good strategies. But we like to use this as a framework. So again, summarizing occupancy, in a perfect world, you'd be able to break even at 50% full. You'd be able to put about 15% on the bottom line at 70% full, and about 30% at 90 to 100% full. And we're going to move from here. I'm going to look at some of your comments and questions. Then we're going to move from here about how we actually calculate that occupancy. I'm going to give you two different ways to do it, and I'm going to give you the pros and cons of each. And I suggest you learn how to do both and do them regularly so that you can gain that information. And now is a really especially interesting time to be doing that. So let's look at our questions. Hello, we're glad to see you guys. Should we only charge new families or all families? Charge, not sure, not if you mean higher tuition rates, maybe you can, new tuition rates. Okay, well, so that's a really good question. And I'm gonna add that to our, I've got some strategies for you on that. So I'm going to add that to our brainstorm list. Should we look at capacity or COVID capacity? Also a really good question. And if you are legally limited from COVID, then I think you have to use that capacity. So your license capacity in normal times is your legal limit. You can't go over that number at any single point in the day. You can have more children than that enrolled. They just can't all be in the building at the same time. But if you have an adjusted legal capacity right now, I think you should use that. I'm not aware of any states that haven't allowed the return to full capacity, but you're probably in one, McKenya, so maybe you'll correct me on that. And maybe that is still out there in some places. So let's jump over to our question list. At one of my locations, we're 90% private pay. After secret shopping, we found we have the highest price, even though we feel they're extremely close to subsidized prices. How do we justify raising the price and attract families if they have less expensive choices? All right, so we're gonna add that. What happens if they have less expensive choices? I'm going to have some questions for you, Gary. Jason, seems to me you're talking about large centers and multiple locations more so than small centers. Here's what I would say about that. I'm certainly not speaking about multiple location centers. My model does work better in a larger facility setting. And the reason for that is that I'm assuming that you are loading your school with a market rate director. And if you are large enough to need it, assistant director. If your capacity is 41, perhaps you are also the director. And I think those numbers still work. So I think what you would do is ignore what you pay yourself. But the numbers should still work in the same way, but I might need to know more, Jason. So maybe I don't know your situation quite as well. Rural area of New Hampshire, difficulty finding staff, amen. So you guys have heard me say that I predicted so incorrectly about what the world was going to look like when we went into COVID. And one of the crazy things I said was, well, at least it'll be easier to hire staff now. Ha ha ha. So that is not easier. It's incredibly more difficult, and I don't expect it to get easier. So I think that that will be the most significant challenge in the industry when we recover. And now it's probably the most challenging industry issue. And I hope that this new world where we are more highly valued as an industry will lend itself to help in some places for things like staff pay, benefits, training. I hope that we'll see some outside resources for help. We were 100% full with a wait list. We've closed 2 of 5, not due to lack of enrollment, but we can't staff the rooms. Yeah. So you're keeping enrollment artificially low because of the lack of staff. So that's actually a good problem to have, Jason, because the demand is there. So many people are in a situation where the demand is not there. And that makes it really difficult, or there's so much competition, or tuition rates are hard to set. So there's so many other difficult factors that you can't easily implement strategies for. What I would say is, and I don't know your school, so I certainly mean this in the highest possible level way, but we believe that culture building with your team is the most important factor in attracting and maintaining your team. We want great pay, we want great benefits, we want all those economic things for our teams, but none of that is enough if you don't have a great supportive culture, a career path, a clear way for people to think of themselves as professionals. And we would be happy to give you some ideas. We address that heavily in our Thrive workshop. We do several hours on staff strategies. And, I really hate this one, but it also was happening before COVID. People would keep their occupancies low because, we can't just have children there without the right number of teachers. So your wife is the director. Okay. All right. I think my model should work. My model should work. But, maybe we want to talk later and there's something I don't know. So Farah, we always accepted credit cards for tuition with no processing fees. We cut this out upon reopening, now charge $60 a month to use them. Parents are requesting we now reconsider as we're getting more full thoughts. Well, so I believe that this is the time to make some strong changes in your business model. And I want you guys to go back to the webinar we did in January, I think, and you can pick that up at hingebrokers.com, because we had a laundry list of about 8 strategies to strengthen your revenue, but also to strengthen your expenses. And some of those revolved around food and lunch. Some of them revolved around credit card fees, and some of them were to continue to have limited operating hours. And we think that you should really push to keep those strategies in place after COVID. I certainly wouldn't change them now. We have not recovered fully, and I would not take that out. Maybe there's more that you could do on the fee. Maybe it's 1% of the tuition, and also there's some states you can't charge a fee. So I'm assuming that that you are, but I certainly wouldn't go backwards on anything that you implement unless it's something like the fact that you cut operational hours by 2 hours a day, and maybe you want to pare that down to 1 hour a day, or even 30 minutes a day is a interesting change and saves you so much in payroll. Don't miss those little bitty increments of payroll saving. They're huge. So couple more, let me just read through the chat real quickly, and then we're going to do some math. Is there an affordability formula you look at apartment firms rent as? No, I don't look at this from the standpoint of what parents can afford. I like it. I think it's important. But what I find is that we really have to look at it from our own perspective. I don't want to sound insensitive to parents and what they can afford, but if you can't make ends meet, if you're awake in the middle of the night concerned about the payroll and the mortgage, and you aren't charging the cost structure that matches up with the services you're delivering, you're not going to do anybody any good because you won't be there long. So I think you really have to first look at it from, what is it costing me to operate? Can I put 15% on the bottom line at 70%? If not, I probably need to look at my tuition rate and discounting structure and see what to do about it. Good old California. Okay, could have guessed that one, I guess. Did I understand you correctly? Most states have allowed a return to original capacities. That's correct. That's correct. So we're hearing here that California has not. I'm not aware of other states that have not. You guys chime in if you're in a state that has not returned to normal group sizes, let us know. We believe that most states have. All right, let's talk about how to use your space that you have available wisely. So some of these are common sense, but bear with me because it just deserves to be said how we all think about using our space. So first of all, we want you to know what strategies build student enrollment. And that's outside of the scope of this workshop, but we do a lot on marketing strategies and branding and effective ways to build enrollment. So be sure that you're up to date on the strategies that today's parent groups pay attention to. So we see a lot of excellent providers get a little behind there, and it can change really quickly. And then a new competitor comes in town and it's bright and shiny and it competes and it draws families in. So just be sure that you understand I call it the academic inflation and the systems and communication and platforms that are now being used in the industry to attract families and communicate with families. It's really important. We want you to understand your capacity. You know, I know you guys are the master at juggling your ratios and group sizes, but be sure, like I said, that you think a little with a little flexibility in your head, and don't get locked into, so this is number 3, don't get locked into, well, this is the infant room and nowhere else is the infant room and this is the toddler room. Be sure that you remain flexible as demand for different age groups changes. We hear across the country that infants are slow to return. So there are a lot of people who have less infants than before. On the other hand, it's expected that there will be an infant surge in the summer and the fall. So the quarantine babies will start to enter our industry, and a lot of people are gearing up for that. So infant toddler tuition rates are really important for you to pay attention to right now. You're most likely losing money in those programs. The ratios are such that few people make money there. They just use them as a way to bring children in sooner and also to gain siblings. So be flexible. You know, if you need to do something, one of the most flexible things we loved, well, I'll give you 2. The virtual delivery of services during COVID that people charged money for, and some of our clients continue to do that and will continue to do it. That's one, and also supporting school-age children with their distance learning. And man, have I seen some juggling acts this year. I have so much respect for teachers that are providing that program. Every child in the room is on a different schedule and, you know, doing their thing with their teacher, and they have to manage you guys know, but wow, what creativity and flexibility the industry showed during that. Okay, so let's do two different ways to calculate occupancy. I want to give you this first one, which is an industry norm. Most people think about how full they are by how many children are enrolled. So let's do that one first. It's simple and it's a good place to start. And then I'll tell you why I think you should do my way also. So let's do the head count method. So let me give you an example. Here, theoretically, here's what we're doing. We're comparing the head count full-time and part-time to your license capacity. So it's what I said to you guys earlier. You have a capacity of 100. You have FTEs, which we'll calculate of 70. You're 70% full. So let's look at an example here, and then I'll breathe for a minute and see if you guys have questions about it. So in this example, this school has 140 full-time students. They have 26 part-time students. The equivalency, the FTE, so the world will speak to you about FTEs. Full-time equivalence is 153. And the way we get that is we count each full-time enrollment as one, and we count each part-time enrollment as a half. So a half of 26 is 13, plus 140 is 153. So this school has FTEs of 153. They are licensed for 180 students. So you can see that they are very healthy in their occupancy. And if we divide 153 into 180, we find out that they're 85% full. So that's a very healthy occupancy. It's a great gauge of the fact that they are in that sweet spot where they've covered their fixed costs. They should have passed break even. The tuition dollars are flowing to the bottom line. And maybe to get that last 15%, maybe they should consider some flexibility in the way they operate, and we'll brainstorm some of those. So I am going to stop right here for a sec, see if you guys have any questions or thoughts about FTEs. So Massachusetts has not returned to normal. Okay. We had a gym we could not use during this year because of COVID, and found a desire in the town to provide in-person first grade. So there's another one. I love this. So many of our students, you know, the 5-year-old kindergarten largely left the industry starting about 30 years ago and continually as public schools implemented more and more and more full day 5-year kindergarten. It basically, except in very high demographic groups that wanted more of a private school setting, it largely left our industry and went into the public schools. And one of the beautiful strategies during COVID has been to implement 5-year kindergarten and first grade. So those students haven't entered school yet. They likely have been in your center, and for them to be able to stay there for another year has been very successful across the industry. And I don't think it's too late for you to consider this as a strategy for fall. You may do a survey and figure out whether you have a demand for 5-year kindergarten or first grade. Most people will be able to break even with that program at about 7 or 8 students. And then, you know, they're going to max at about 12. They could have a bigger group, but now you need an aide. And that's okay too, but really difficult to do effectively for less students than that. Would you consider 4 days a week full-time? We have to be a little creative with it, hey, Mamta. And we, you know, there's no real perfect world. I probably would consider that full-time. It's closer to full-time than part-time. And I'm guessing that as you guys charge tuition for less than a 5-day week, you're charging a premium for that. So we want to talk about that too. And in some cases, that can be a great strategy. You can match up 3-day-a-week students with 2-day-a-week students, charge more than 3/5 and 2/5. and do better financially. So that's a strategy we really love as well. Yeah, okay. All right, so everybody's with me. Pretty simple calculation for FTEs. And, you know, we believe that you should keep this percent going and calculated every week. I want you to know every week what your occupancy is. So this is a useful calculation, and start there if you're not doing one yet. But there is a different methodology that I would like for you to also consider, because if you only count the heads, there are some hidden dangers in that. So what we're going to look at is we're going to look at the annual revenue after discounts. So you should be able to get this from your tax return. If that's all the information you have, it would just be your gross revenue top line number. So it's tuition plus all other charges minus discounts is, some people will call it net revenue. But I want you to think about it logically as all the money that went in the bank. Because at the end of the day, that's all that matters. It doesn't matter if you charge tuition to 100 people, if you're going to discount 50 of them and then it doesn't go in the bank. So if you count the 100 heads, you might miss something that's a bigger factor. How many of those students are paying you your full rate? So I want you to look at your net revenue. So revenue plus other charges minus discounts, because again, that's the amount of money that went or should have gone in the bank, assuming you collected all your tuition. So I hope that's not a problem with you. If it is, also go to our website and pick up that webinar. Then we want to look at your average tuition rate, which for most companies that provide services to infants through after schoolers, it's their 3-year-old full-time rate, because usually infants and toddlers are more, after school is less. You might have to play around with that a little bit. It could be a monthly rate or a weekly rate, but you know, it's not important for you to calculate it to the micro penny, but come up with what you feel like your average tuition rate is a year. And then again, we want to base this on your license capacity or legal capacity if you're being limited by your state. All right, so let's see how this one works. All right, so we call it a 3-year-old equivalency method. So what this says logically is, if every child in your building was a full-time 3-year-old, here's how full you would be. And again, in most schools, we use the 3-year-old as the average, but you might have to use a different rate. So the first thing we want you to do is find your annual revenue. And I know if you've got a smaller school or a school not doing as well, don't get mad at me that I chose this number, because this is a possible number. And a lot of our guys put this on their top line regularly. So again, all tuition charges, all other charges, which could be registration fees and material fees and late payment fees and late pickup fees, any fee that you charge, minus your discounts, which are typically staff discounts, multiple child in the same family discount, free days, and I'm about to get preachy if you're doing that, and industry discounts and subsidy discounts, any discount. So then I want, again, the dollar amount that you actually put in the bank. If I think I've said this at least 5 times, so I know I sounded like a broken record, but I care about you guys, and I want to be sure I'm driving at home. No more current methods for discounting and what the industry has gone to, and use this as a very bold time to get rid of or limit some discounting that may be holding your company back. But I want to just refer you back to my preachiness from the last webinar. it would take me another hour to hit you with it all again. So all of the school's revenue. Now we want to look at what that is on a weekly basis. We could also do it on a monthly basis, but this model will divide that into 52 weeks and say that we deposited 28,000 and change a week on average. Our average tuition rate is $190 a week. Our license capacity is 180. So we are now going to calculate this. Whoops, went too far. Okay, so we're now going to calculate our FTE percent by taking the 28,000 weekly revenue divided by the 3-year-old full-time rate of $190 a week and divided by the license capacity of 180. So one more time, 28,076.92 divided by 190 divided by 180 gives us a number that's pretty similar to the calculation that we did in head count method. And in a perfect world, those numbers should be pretty close. If they are not pretty close, and the way you calculate it here is less than, I want you to seriously consider your discounting, because that could be the thing. Because here's what we get into. We go in the building and we count the heads and we do the math and we're 70% full. And what we don't think about is how many of those 70 students are paying us our full-time rate. So I want you to use both of these methods so you don't get caught in one of those times and you're just not thinking about it that way. We certainly will share our slides. So I have our wonderful Meredith Douglas here, and she will be happy to do that. Should we consider charging per week rather than per month? You're losing dollars on a few months, or charging by month and increase it. Yeah, so one of our strategies that we have recommended to people was to move from weekly billing to monthly billing if you are currently weekly. So I wouldn't go backwards from that. I would, if you go from weekly to monthly, you should take your weekly times 52 weeks and then divide it by 12. It's hard to do 4 weeks because you are missing 2 weeks a year, and that's significant. So I would suggest you adjust your tuition to match what it actually should be, but I would caution against going backwards. If you charge monthly, it is easier administratively, it gets you your money sooner, it helps with your cash flow. It's the direction the industry is moving. So I would definitely continue to charge monthly. But good question. Okay, so here's some of our best tips and tricks, and then I've got a few more that people threw at me in the last couple of days, and I want you guys to jump in here with your best ideas and whatever questions you still have. So first of all, I said it already, but I would like for you to get into the habit of knowing, and there are 4 or 5 things I want you to know weekly. This is one of them. Love to have you join us at Thrive so I can hit you with the rest of them. But I'd like for you to but calculate it weekly and be able to compare this before and the year before and the year before to see what you're about the flexibility by moving rooms and age groups around as the market demand changes. We want inflation, and more important since COVID, because we've had to do some things completely differently. There's some brilliant touring, remote touring going on, remote interviewing. It's easier for the team, and some people believe that they'll continue to do some of those things. So lots of creativity, but also how do you reach today's parent group? What is the to communicate with parents, so see the when they drop off or pick up anyway, even with, and that's also a marketing. Sorry about that, guys. I got disconnected. So let me be sure. My internet kicked me out. Be sure we're good. I think we are. Somebody pipe up in the chat bar that I'm back online and you can hear me. I'm freezing, Heather. Thank you for letting me know. Sorry about that. Can somebody, okay, you can see me. Am I doing okay with the connection? Yay. Okay. Thank you, guys. And thank you for Heather for letting us know. I think I got kicked out before I saw that we were freezing. I think we're all overloading the internet systems with all the Zooming we're doing now. Thanks, Rick. Okay, so the last bullet here, and then I have a few to add in, are that there has been a huge also inflation and the look of facilities and playgrounds. And there are companies that specialize in branding for our industry. We love our friends at Better Beans Branding who love, let me fix this so you can, there we go. Maybe that's good. Okay, sorry. I think I have to share my screen again. There we go. Thank you for letting me know. We should be back. Good. Okay. All right. Sorry about that little hiccup. So we believe that in this market is even more important than it has ever been to be sure that your company effectively communicates who you are in your messaging. What is your brand? How do your people communicate what you believe in? How do you answer the phone? How do you tour? What does it look like from the outside of your building? What does it look like on the inside of your building? Be up to date with trends in playgrounds. Playgrounds are moving toward more natural landscapes. There's some pretty cool certifications and outdoor classrooms, and those kind of things give you a real competitive sizzle. Understand and know what your competitive sizzle is so that you can effectively compete with, you will continue to see competition expand across the country. The majority of the national groups have very aggressive expansion and new construction programs right now. So just be ready. I don't want to say that to scare you. I just want you to not look up one day and bright and shiny came in, and that attracts people. It does. When we say all the time what really matters is what happens in the classroom, but they have to at least come in the door to figure that out. So your facility and your people have to attract people in. So be sure you're staying up to date there. So I have a few more for you guys that I want to mention, and then I would love if we have about 5 minutes, so you guys pipe in with what you think. So some of the questions we're getting recently are, Should I take part-time students? So that's a really good question for schools that have historically limited themselves to full-time. Should you be more flexible right now with part-time? My opinion is yes, and I would do a couple of things. The first thing I would do is be sure that the family understands that if you get to the place where you need that spot for a full-time enrollment, you will let them know and they can make a decision about whether to go full-time or disenroll. Also, if it's less than full-time, charge a premium. So charge a premium if it's 2 days a week, not 2/5 of the regular tuition, but more than 2/5. We have people who have successfully moved into other business lines. For instance, do I accept subsidies that I typically wouldn't have? And do I allow that number to get bigger than it has been historically? Some people don't prefer it. It's a lot of work administratively, and it's not in their mission, but a lot of people have either started or expanded their ability to accept tuition dollars. We have companies who have successfully for years done Head Start collaborations, early Head Start and Head Start. They're doing gorgeous work in buildings and on playgrounds from their collaborations with some of our private providers. So get to know that person in your space. In first grade, can you provide the after school program in your local public school? I love that model. So think out of the box now. Where else can you get revenue sources? And then lastly, about increasing tuition, I feel like that if you determine that your tuition rate is drastically lower than it should be, I like a strategy of increasing current families somewhat a tolerable level, and then doing a more drastic increase on incoming families. It's going to take you 3 or 4 years to work your way out of that, but don't make it 6 or 7 years and then have to start 3 or 4 years. Just if you're starting at the right place, I like a annual increase of about 3 to 5%, but your expenses also increased since COVID. So most of our clients did 2 tuition rate increases in 2020, or they did larger than usual. And if they weren't in the right place to start with, they increased those families more drastically. Someone asked the question about what if they're less expensive choices. You may be in a market where expense is the main driver of parents' decisions. And that's just a reality for some families. It is the absolute driver of their decision, and that's what they can do, and that's all they can do. And so I'm certainly respectful of that. And it's difficult to work with if that is the case. In most markets, parents will pay more for what they believe to be better. And a lot of times they gauge the quality of the service by the tuition rate initially. So keeping it artificially low can hurt you that way too. So you think you're attracting parents who will see it as a bargain, when we believe the actual thought process is they're probably not as good as if they're less than. So we think it not only hurts you financially, it hurts you from a marketing perspective as well. So you have to know your market. I caution people, don't get too caught up in what your competition's doing. The first thing to know is, are they true competition, or do they just provide services in your area? They're two completely different things. Just because they provide early education or childcare does not make them a competitor. Are they truly on the same level that you are? And if so, what are you going to do to notch it up and try to be a little higher than your true competition? Those are kind of my rules of thumb, but again, we could do an hour completely on tuition. Do you include the food program revenue in the revenue calculation? I do, Melissa. Some people will offset their food cost. I prefer to put it in revenue. And then, you're going to have a little more administrative and food costs, but not significantly. So I do include that in revenue. It's cash that's going in your bank. So it's creative. It's you taking the opportunity to participate in a program that brings revenue in. I give you credit for it. I think it's great. Why would you move from weekly to monthly for convenience? Convenience is one thing. It's less expensive for you. Also, to collect once and track down parents instead of 4 or 5 times and track down parents. And it's just gets the money in faster. So it's it's easier on your cash situation. So those are my 2 main reasons for wanting you to move there. Let's see. I think I have hit your questions. You guys, I so appreciate, I think we just bumped up against the hour. I so appreciate your brain space, what you shared about your company and about your best strategies. One thing I know about this industry is that no one is really afraid to share. We're all in this together. Our best strategies can work in a lot of different places. So it's fantastic to know those things and hear from you. So take care and be well, friends. Please reach out if the team at Hinge can support you, if we can answer individual questions, because I'm sure you guys realize that every school is different. We also have an expense model we're happy to get over to you guys. It's a benchmark that we've created that you can input your average tuition rate and your capacity, and it will populate the expenses to show you what the average school in the United States spends in each expense category. And again, every school is different, so use it as a benchmark. We hope to see you in October, Heather. Good to see you. And Aaron, we'd be happy to speak with you if there's something we can do to support. Just reach out. You can reach me through our website at hingebrokers.com, and we're happy to have a team member support you any way we can. So thanks. We hope to see you guys soon, and take care and be well, friends.